The sun had barely risen over Osisioma, but the village was already humming with life. A soft orange glow kissed the thatched rooftops, and the sound of mortar and pestle echoed in rhythm with distant cockcrows. From the east, women with clay pots balanced effortlessly on their heads walked in single file toward Ekeugo, their voices lifted in gentle folk songs that drifted across the morning air like prayer. Children chased one another through red-sanded paths, laughing with bare feet and open joy. Yet beneath the harmony, Osisioma was a land tightly bound by invisible cords, ancient traditions so old no one dared question them aloud. The land where purity was law, and bloodlines were sacred. The elders said the gods watched Osisioma more closely than any other village. Here, a whisper could become a curse, and a single misstep could bring shame not just to a person, but to a lineage. The shrine at the village square stood silent but imposing, its carved faces staring out like judges. No one passed it without bowing, even children. Every maiden knew her fate could never be her own to decide, not entirely. And every man knew that if the king bore no son, the throne would pass to whichever man married his daughter. That law, older than memory, shaped alliances and birthed enemies in silence. And now, Princess Olanma was of age, beautiful, unmarried. The village watched her every move, holding its breath, wondering who would take the throne through her. Or would she obey? Or worse, had she already sinned? King Ekeugo of Osisioma was not just a ruler, he was a rhythm the village had learned to dance to. With shoulders broad like the great Iroko and eyes that could pierce lies from across a courtyard, he was both feared and adored. Elders sought his counsel, warriors touched the hem of his wrapper for luck, and market women sang his praises even when the sun scorched their backs. Every morning, villagers gathered at the palace gates with baskets of kola nuts, yams, palm wine, gifts not demanded, but offered freely. For our king who speaks and the gods listen, they would say. He judged disputes not with rage but with precision, weighing every word like a goldsmith appraising treasure. Justice was not just law to Ekeugo, it was legacy. But behind the authority, behind the glint of the staff of power he carried, there was a silence no one dared mention. The silence of the queen's chamber. The queen who died screaming his name as she gave him his only child. The blood had barely dried when he made the vow, I shall not take another wife. Olanma is the last of our breath, I will raise her alone. And he did. He taught her to read the stars, to understand the weight of silence, to walk with her chin high even when tears begged to fall. Yet, even the strongest skins have cracks. And Ekeugo's was growing, for Olanma was no longer a child. She was a woman now, and her heart, it was no longer his to protect. At 22, Olanma moved through Osisioma like morning light, soft, warm, and impossible to ignore. Her beauty was undeniable, but it wasn't just the smoothness of her caramel skin or the delicate arch of her brows that made heads turn. It was the grace in her steps, the quiet strength in her voice, and the way she could silence a quarrel with a single glance. The villagers called her Nwani Choku, the daughter of the gods. She had become more than a princess. She was a pillar in the community. Women came to her when their husbands drank too much, children ran to her with bruises and broken toys, and even the elderly whispered, "Let's hear what Olanma thinks," before making decisions. She visited the sick without guards, helped wash the feet of crying widows, and still found time to teach young girls how to write with chalk on banana leaves. Her bond with her father, King Ekeugo, was unlike any seen before. When they sat side by side under the palace idolatry, it was as if the spirits of the queen washed over them. He called her his second heart, and she called him her first love. But behind her smiles and calm voice, Olanma carried a weight, an expectation that thickened with every passing moon. Suitors came like waves, princes, warriors, sons of chiefs. They sent silk, gold, and oxen. All were met with a polite refusal, because none of them were from Osisioma. And according to the law, only a son of the soil could wed her. But hearts, as the old women often warned, do not kneel before laws. And Olanma's heart, it had already chosen, quietly, dangerously, irreversibly. The law was older than any living soul in Osisioma. Etched into the stone pillar at the village square, whispered during moonlight tales, and recited during coronations, if a king births no son, the one who weds his daughter shall wear the crown. It had shaped destinies for generations. And now, with no prince in sight, all eyes turned to Princess Olanma. For King Ekeugo, the law was a shadow that clung to every breath he took. He had led the kingdom with pride, never imagining that his legacy might pass not through his own seed, but through the man his daughter would choose. Or worse, the man she wouldn't. Olanma, once free to wander the village like a bird with no tether, now felt caged by invisible threads spun by expectation, tradition, and ambition. Every smile from a suitor carried weight. Every glance from an elder felt like a quiet demand. Osisioma's most powerful families had begun their games. Gifts arrived daily: fine goats, woven fabrics, bags of salt, spices from distant lands. Not for the king, for Olanma. Their sons paraded themselves in the market, flexing muscles and offering exaggerated bows. Alliances were formed behind closed doors, chiefs murmuring names and promises into cups of palm wine. But no one asked Olanma what she wanted. Cause in Osisioma, tradition didn't wait for the heart. It only waited for the wedding drum. And that drum was being carved. The morning mist still danced over Ik River when Olanma bent to fill her pot, the god dipping silently into the cool current. She was alone, or so she thought, until a voice, smooth like palm wine, said, "Careful, the current's stronger today." She turned swiftly. A young man stood a few feet away, holding a bundle of freshly plucked leaves. He had a quiet strength about him, with deep-set eyes and a scar on his jaw that looked like a forgotten story. "I've not seen you here before," she said, cautious. "I just arrived." "I'm passing through," he replied, offering no more. "I'm Arinze." Most strangers in Osisioma were met with suspicion, but Arinze didn't beg or boast. Instead, he knelt beside a boy with a swollen foot nearby, crushed leaves in his palm, and pressed them gently to the wound. The boy stopped crying. Olanma watched him, curious. The next day, he was there again, this time, waiting, and again the next. Their conversations stretched from herbs to dreams, from laughter to silences that said more than words could. She never asked where he truly came from, and he never offered, but the ache in her chest each time she left him told her this bond was no passing breeze, it was a storm gathering. She told no one, not even her maid. She wrapped his name like a secret beneath her wrapper, because in Osisioma, love with an outsider wasn't just forbidden, it was an abomination. The Udola tree stood tall at the edge of the forest, its branches stretched like arms shielding secrets from the gods. It was under that tree that Olanma and Arinze met again and again, always just before the sun dipped behind the hills, when the air was thick with scent of ripe fruit and danger. She would arrive with her scarf low over her brow, eyes darting, heart pounding. He'd already be waiting, leaning against the trunk like he belonged there, like he belonged with her. It was under that same tree that he finally told her the truth. "I'm from Umofia," he said quietly, his fingers weaving strands of grass as he avoided her eyes. "My parents died in the war. I was raised by herbalists, in hiding." She froze. The name alone sent chills down her spine. Umofia, the village Osisioma had once battled with over land and blood. If anyone found out she was speaking to, touching, loving, a son of Umofia. "But you're not them," she whispered, reaching for his hand. You're good." His fingers curled around hers, trembling. "And you are the only peace I've ever known." Each time they kissed, it felt stolen, too sweet, too fleeting. Olanma lay awake most nights, guilt clawing at her chest. She knew she was breaking more than tradition. She was breaking her father's heart, her people's trust. But when she saw Arinze, none of that mattered. "We can't keep this up," she whispered one evening. "Then let's run," he said. "Far from here." Her lips parted. She should have said no, but instead, she nodded. It began with whispers. Olanma, the ever-gracious jewel of Osisioma, had become distant. Her smile, once bright enough to calm a crying child, now flickered like a dying lantern. She walked through the village with her mind elsewhere, her steps lower, her eyes always searching the horizon. The women at the market noticed. The elders noticed. Even the children noticed. And so did Gioma, the sharp-eyed palace maid who never missed a thing. One evening, while fetching firewood beyond the compound walls, Gioma spotted something that made her drop her bundle. There, beneath the shadows of the Udola tree, stood Olanma, wrapped in the arms of a stranger. Gioma didn't need to see his face twice. He wasn't one of them. He didn't belong. She ran, straight to Chief Ozogbo, a cunning man with a cold smile, one of the king's trusted advisors and father to Obina, a favored suitor of Olanma. When Gioma told him, his brows lifted with interest, not outrage. His fingers drummed slowly on the table. "You're sure of what you saw?" he asked. "I would stake my own tongue on it," she replied. Ozogbo's mind raced. This was more than scandal, this was opportunity. A princess tangled with an outsider. That was enough to destroy her chances, and clear the path for his son. Say nothing for now, he said, leaning forward. Let's not shout at the bush and scare the snake. We'll strike when it matters most. And with that, the trap was set. When the whispers reached King Ekeugo's ears, he laughed, sharp and short, like the crack of dry wood. My Olanma, he scoffed. She would never. She was his pride, his reflection, the one person he trusted beyond the gods themselves. But the murmurs didn't stop. They grew louder, more pointed. And Gioma's eyes, always lowered before, now darted with barely concealed secrets. So he followed her. That evening, cloaked in silence, he trailed Olanma from the palace gates, keeping to the shadows like a hunter stalking prey. His heart pounded louder than his steps, but still he pressed on. Down the winding path, past the edge of the village, into the dense hush of the forest. There, under the sacred udala tree, he saw them. Arinze's arms were around her. Her head rested against his chest. They swayed slightly, as if to music only they could hear. And when Arinze leaned down to kiss her, something inside Ekeugo cracked. He stepped out. Olanma, the voice shattered the silence. She spun, eyes wide. Arinze froze. Papa, please, she began, but he raised his hand. Do you know what you've done? You dishonor this land, your mother's memory. Tears rolled down her cheeks. He makes me feel alive, father. Not like a princess, like a person. The word stabbed deeper than any blade. Ekeugo looked at Arinze with eyes made of stone. You leave Osisioma tonight. If the sun rises and you are still here, you will not see another. Olanma dropped to her knees, begging, sobbing. But her father turned his back. His footsteps echoed like thunder retreating into darkness. Olanma did not eat. She did not speak. She locked her chamber doors and shut out the world. From behind the carved wooden panels, muffled sobs could be heard at night, like a ghost mourning its own fate. The king sent for her, but she refused to come. Even the village priestess arrived with chants and warnings. Still, silence. Her grief curled itself around her like smoke, choking every breath. On the fourth night, under a moon smeared with clouds, the palace gates creaked open. No one saw Olanma slip out, wrapped in a dark wrapper, barefoot. Only her maid, Ezin, knew, and she wept as she handed her the reins of the chestnut horse. He might be far, Ezin whispered, but love has its own path. Olanma nodded, her eyes hollow but burning. If I die on this journey, let it be known, I died chasing what they denied me. She rode hard into the forest, the trees swallowing her silhouette. The hoofs pounded the earth like war drums, fading into the distance, into silence. At sunrise, the chestnut horse returned, alone. Its saddle was torn, one side smeared with dried blood. The palace guards froze. The king came out, bare-chested and trembling, his gaze locked on the riderless animal. Where is she? He whispered. No one answered. The wind carried a single sound that morning, of Ezin's wailing in the courtyard, a sound so raw it made even the palace stones weep. The morning mist had barely lifted when the cry rang out from the riverbank. A fisherman, trembling, pointed to a ship crumpled near the jagged rocks where the water foamed with fury. Within moments, the path to Ik River was thick with villagers, some barefoot, some still clutching calabashes from the stream. But all stopped in stunned silence when they saw her. Olanma, her body lay twisted, half submerged, her wrapper soaked in blood and river water. One hand was outstretched, fingers curled around nothing. Her forehead bore a deep gash, clean, brutal. The rocks told no lies. A fall, or a desperate escape. Someone whispered her name. Another gasped, but no one moved. Arinze was gone. No trace of him. No footprints. No blood. Just silence and the mocking murmur of the river. Then the king came. He walked like a ghost, bare-chested, eyes hollow. When he saw her, he fell. No words, no grace, just the raw collapse of a father breaking apart. He gathered her into his arms, shaking, weeping so loudly the birds scattered from the trees. My Olanma, my child, my only child. His sobs echoed into the hills. Some say even the river paused. That day, Osisioma did not cook. Markets shut. Drums were silent. From palace to hut, every heart ached. The princess who once danced at the village square was now still, her dreams drowned in the river that raised her. And no one knew what happened to the man she loved. Days passed. The air in Osisioma turned thick, too still, too quiet. Then, one dusk, a strange breeze swept through the village, stirring dust and fear alike. At the palace gate, a tall masked herbalist appeared, a fierce hawk perched on his shoulder, eyes glowing like fire. "I bring word from Arinze," he said, voice echoing like thunder before a storm. King Ekeugo, frail and sunken from grief, rose slowly. "Speak now, what truth do you carry?" The herbalist stepped forward, removed his mask with trembling hands, and revealed a face the king hadn't seen in 23 years. A face thought dead. To be continued. If you enjoyed this video, kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel for the next episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. Thank you.